Everyone thought Naomi Carter had done it right. She married the star. She built the family. She became the wife younger women watched when they needed proof that stability was still possible in the league. But in the world of modern day gladiators, image is fragile. And when the mask finally slipped off of Naomi's marriage, the truth didn't just cost her a husband, it cost her the future she thought she was building twice. I couldn't believe it. It was him, and I saw it. The change didn't happen overnight. It came in whispers, offhand comments, half finished stories, the kind of things wives say when they're trying to warn you without starting a war. Naomi couldn't travel as much anymore. A newborn at home, 2 kids in school, 3 little lives tethered to her daily rhythm. While her husband flew city to city, Naomi stayed back, trusting that the man she had built a life with was still honoring the vows he made. One wife said, "I thought I saw Naomi's husband in the hotel lobby with someone last week." Another added, "He was at the bar after the game, not with the guys, but with a woman." Then came the part Naomi couldn't shake. "It's always the same woman." At first, she did what so many women in her position do. She gave him the benefit of the doubt. Someone from that city, a friend from high school, maybe a college connection, because the alternative was too painful. The idea that while she was up at night with their new baby, he might be building another kind of life on the road. Mid-season, everything shifted. Naomi's husband was traded. New team, new city, 2,000 miles away. He took the news in stride because in the gladiator's life, being traded at any time is always a possibility. Even if you are an anchor on the team and a starter, nothing is guaranteed. Naomi was trying to figure out what she was going to do while her husband was packing in a hurry. He said with such planned confidence, "Don't pull the kids out of school mid-year. Let them finish. You stay back. I'll get settled, and then we'll talk about the move." On paper, it sounded reasonable, although they've moved teams many times before this time. But this time, Naomi had a baby routine, school pickups, activities, and a house full of structure. Uprooting all of that in the mid-season felt overwhelming, so she agreed to not go with him, but bring the kids out during school breaks and just staying in constant contact. But once he left, something heavier than distance moved in: silence. At first, it was a few missed calls, a text answered hours later, "Sorry, long day." Then days without hearing his voice, weeks of "I'll call you back" that never turned into calls. Naomi would dial his number and watch it ring until the voicemail cut her off. She would send a picture of the baby and see delivered, but not seen. He had time for interviews, time for practice, time for social media. Somehow, there was no time for the woman raising his children. Naomi was thinking to herself that how can you talk to reporters, but you can't talk to your own son before his spelling test? Okay, you're not talking to me, but your son? Her intuition wasn't whispering anymore, it was screaming. Naomi had spent years shrinking herself to protect the image of her marriage, staying calm, staying composed, making sure the picture looked right, even when the frame was cracked. But there comes a point where even the gentlest woman decides she is done waiting to be chosen. After a month of unanswered calls and half-hearted excuses, she stopped asking, "What's wrong?" Instead, she made a decision. She packed up what mattered most: clothes, school records, favorite toys, the pieces of a life you can carry when you're not sure what you're walking into. She told the kids they were going to see Daddy. She did not tell them she was also going to see the truth. The new city wasn't far from where Naomi grew up. close enough that she still had family nearby. At the time, that just felt convenient. Later, she would understand it as protection. When he opened the door, Naomi expected surprise, maybe guilt, maybe even relief that she had brought his children to him. What she got instead was resistance. He stood in the doorway like a stranger guarding his space. No rush to hug the kids, no arms reaching for the baby, just a tight jaw and guarded eyes. You can't just show up here, Naomi. We're your family. At first, she told herself he was overwhelmed. Maybe the place wasn't ready. Maybe he didn't want the kids to see the boxes everywhere. And then she saw her. The woman didn't need an introduction. Naomi knew who she was without ever hearing her name. The college love, the unfinished chapter, the ghost that had been haunting their marriage from day one. Only now she wasn't a ghost. She was standing in Naomi's husband's doorway, comfortable, at home, in the life Naomi thought she was building for him. In that moment, everything lined up. The whispers on road trips, the late night messages, the sudden trade, the silence after. Naomi realized she wasn't just visiting her husband's new team. She had driven straight to the life he'd chosen without her. Naomi did what many mothers do who are married to gladiators in front of their children. She held it together. There was no screaming match on the porch, no scene for the neighbors. She simply gathered her children, gave them a softened version of the story, and left. Humiliation burned hotter than anger. She had been the wife other women admired, the example, the reminder that a strong family was still possible in the league. Now she was the woman whose husband had replaced her with the very love story she always quietly feared. In a city full of strangers, Naomi had one place that still felt like safety: her aunt's house. Her aunt didn't need the full recap. She saw Naomi's face at the door, took one look at the children, and pulled them all inside. She fed them, made up beds, ran baths, and wrapped Naomi in the kind of embrace you only get from someone who knew you before titles, before money, before you ever became someone's wife. Naomi's heart didn't just break, it crashed. Grief doesn't always look like tears. Sometimes it looks like a woman who can't bring herself to unpack a suitcase. Sometimes it looks like staring at a wall while your aunt keeps the children laughing in the next room. Her aunt became the bridge between the life Naomi had lost and the one she wasn't sure she wanted anymore. She reminded her of who she was before the league, before the image, before the Carter last name tried to swallow her whole identity. 3 more seasons came and went. On the field, he kept playing. Off the field, lawyers sorted what was left. Eventually, the marriage ended in paperwork long after it ended in reality. He married his college sweetheart, the woman he had chosen in his heart long before he admitted it out loud. And together they built the family Naomi thought she was giving him. Eventually, they had 5 children, all girls, the last 2 identical twins. Every announcement, every picture that floated back through the grapevine cut in a place Naomi didn't know how to bandage. Because when Naomi had her 3rd child, he insisted that their family was complete. He told her he didn't want any more children. He convinced her to have the procedure so there would be no accidents, no surprises, no more babies. She agreed because she believed they were making that decision together as husband and wife about the family they would always share. Now, that same man was building a bigger family with someone else. The limit he placed on Naomi wasn't about what he didn't want, it was about what he didn't want with her. But Naomi is not made of glass. She is made of something much harder to break. She rebuilt. She went to therapy. She found work that mattered. She started counseling battered women, listening to stories of broken bones, broken promises, and broken self worth, and saw pieces of herself in all of them. Helping other women stand back up slowly helped her remember how to stand herself. By the fifth year after her divorce, Naomi was not the same woman who once begged for access to a life that was already moving without her. She was steadier, clearer, stronger. She had promised herself one thing: no more gladiators. No more men with their names chanted by thousands while their homes went quiet. And then she met Frank. Frank wasn't a football player, he was a professional basketball star, a gladiator of a different arena. He had the same physical confidence Naomi knew too well: the stride, the shoulders, the easy way people recognized him. But off the court, he was different from what she expected. He was soft spoken. He listened more than he talked. He asked real questions about her day. He didn't see her as an accessory, he saw her as a person. Frank had never been married. He didn't have children of his own. But he stepped into Naomi's world gently. He went to school events, showed up for small milestones, took her son seriously, let her daughter talk his ear off. He never tried to replace their father. He just chose to be there in the spaces their father had left empty. Thinking to herself, Naomi said, I was done with gladiators. And somehow I ended up with another one. Part of her resented the pattern. Another part of her couldn't deny this felt different. Frank didn't treat their home like a break between games. He treated it like his refuge. After an intentional, tender courtship, Frank asked Naomi to marry him. He didn't promise stadium-sized romance. He promised steadiness, partnership, a life where she didn't have to hold everything up by herself. She said yes. For the first time, Naomi allowed herself to believe that maybe she could have love without chaos, commitment without constant fear, a gladiator who knew how to fight for her at home as much as he fought in the arena. Then, in the middle of all the normal wedding stress, the conversation that changes everything arrived: children. Naomi assumed the answer was simple. She already had 3. Frank loved them. The house was full. But Frank had a dream of his own. He wanted to know what it felt like to look into a newborn's face and see his own features, to carry his child out of a hospital, to hear someone call him dad who shared his blood. Not instead of Naomi's kids, in addition to them. Naomi knew this moment would come. She just hoped love would be enough to soften it. She told Frank the truth. Years earlier, after their 3rd baby, her ex-husband had insisted their family was complete. He didn't want more children with her. He pushed for something permanent. Naomi, trying to be a good wife, agreed. She had her tubes tied and burned, believing she was making a forever decision with a forever partner. Now, that choice stood between her and the man who finally treated her the way she deserved. Frank didn't walk away. Not at first. He said, let's see what's possible. He sat through consultations, listened to medical jargon, watched Naomi tell the same painful story to strangers in white coats who only saw her as a case file. Every specialist gave them a version of the same answer. The procedure was permanent. Reversal wasn't an option. On the eve of their wedding, Frank made a decision of his own. He called it off. He told Naomi he loved her, that she was everything he wanted in a partner, but he still wanted the chance to experience fatherhood from the very beginning, a child with his DNA, his name, his smile. And no matter how hard she tried, Naomi could not give him that. Naomi was devastated and could not help but think, my first gladiator broke my heart. My second walked away because of a wound the first one left behind. This heartbreak cut in a different way. When her husband cheated, Naomi could point to his choices, his selfishness, his unfinished love. But when Frank left, it felt like punishment for a decision she had made years earlier in the name of loyalty. She lived far from her aunt now. She didn't want to make that same call, didn't want to feel like the woman who always needed rescuing. So she did what thousands of women do every day. She kept functioning. School drop-offs, work, counseling sessions, dinner, homework, bath time, bedtime. Then breaking down alone after the kids were asleep in the quiet no one else sees. In those sessions with battered women, she heard pieces of herself. Women who stayed too long, women who believed too much, women who sacrificed their bodies, dreams, and futures for men who were already halfway out the door. Naomi realized she wasn't just helping them. Their survival stories were helping her remember that she was still here too. She had loved two gladiators in two different arenas. One chose another woman, the other chose a future her body could no longer give. Both left her standing in the quiet, holding the pieces. But Naomi Carter is not a tragedy. Her story is not about the gladiators she attracted. Her story is about the woman she is becoming when the crowd is gone. The arenas are silent, and she finally starts living for herself and her children, not for a man's jersey or a man's dream. Naomi's story is far from over. Some endings are really the beginning of a woman finally choosing herself. If this story spoke to you, if you've ever loved someone whose life is lived under the lights while your struggles stay in the shadows, know that you're not alone and your story matters too. To hear more stories from women loving, living with, and sometimes walking away from their gladiators, make sure you follow the show and share this episode with someone who needs it. This has been Married to a Gladiator, where we honor the hearts behind the helmets and the women who choose themselves without choosing against love. Until next time, keep writing your own playbook.